Hello and welcome to Quackcast 359. This is Ozone Ocean, the Drunk Duck Quackcast. We have Mr. Baines. Hello, Mr. Baines.
Hello.
We have Pitface. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And we have Tance. Hello, Tancey.
Hello.
Tancey Pancy. Okay, so we're going to be talking about covers. Got that look from Tance. That's exactly why I said it. We're going to be talking about covers.
Oh no, I recorded you.
Covers is what we're going to talk about. Covers for comics, web comics. I mean, why should web comics have covers? Because they don't need them. This was Pitface's idea. She made a thread about it. After
I did. I was proactive for once, and I didn't just edit other people's comments unfairly.
You did. You actually made a thread about this whole idea, and it was really interesting. Interesting enough to provoke a Quackcast. The whole idea, I think it was based. So it was based around anime openings, which are fantastic. Often, sometimes there's crap anime openings, but anime openings are a way of getting people's interest, showing you what a story is going to be like, giving you a preview of how things are going to look. And covers are the same kind of way. They're a way of showcasing what's going to be there. But webcomics, as you said, don't need covers, but we still do them anyway. Why do we do them? That's what this Quackcast is going to be about. But before we do that, we have to bring up the regular featured comics. The featured spot is done by me this week, and I'm going to do it. Okay, take it away, Ozone Ocean, with the feature. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Tony Kino's Adventures. Tony Kino befriends a happy little dog, rescuing it from a grumpy, old, bearded guy who claims it's getting into his dreams. Of course, Tony isn't having any of that nonsense, and brings home the dog to his daughter, but pretty soon he starts to have strange encounters and weird things happening to him. This is a fun, humorous comic with more than a touch of the supernatural. It's a mystery supernatural story told with a lot of humor. The art is full color and nicely stylized. It reminds me a little of Tintin. Especially if you've ever seen Tintin, you'll see that kind of thing, the same sort of bold colors and thin lines and just a really nice stylized sort of look to the characters. Andy Arts is Finnish, I believe, so English is a second language. This means the syntax can sometimes be a little unusual, but quite beautiful and individual because of it. This was a very enjoyable comic. It's, again, like many of the comics they feature, there's not too many pages because it's only just starting, so it's very easy to get into and enjoy. You'll be right in on the ground floor, starting to enjoy this comic as it develops and following Tony Kino on his adventures with all the strange people he meets and this little dog, which is the being in the very first story. So it's a lot of fun. So it's written and illustrated by Andy Arts, Tony Kino Adventures, rated E. And that was our featured comic, Kino's Adventures, I believe. Yeah, it was. Well, I would have told you about that anyway. Okay. Oh, the featured music. Oh, the music. Gun Wallace has given us the music. Fantastic. Thank you, Gun Wallace. And the music this week is for Quaidolia, which has nothing to do with Quaidaguxay. This is something totally different. The music is... I'll describe the comic. Quaidolia. It's seeing cute things in shapes. So there you go. It's as simple as that. So it's a cute comic. The music is a dreamy journey into a world of green shade, damp fresh air, and dapple golden sunlight. This is a pretty track full of beauty. Take it away, Gun Wallace. was the music. Thank you so much for that, Gum Wallace. It was beautiful. And please read Quaidolia. It's cute little comic. It's by Skeptical Square, and it's rated E for everyone, for excellent. So read it. All right, covers. Pitt, what do you think about covers? Tell us.
I think they're great.
They are fantastic. So how did you come up with the idea of covers? What are you doing, James?
I got some mint. I apologize.
Adding ice to your
He's like playing with a cat toy.
whiskey. Oh,
So the idea occurred to me when I was glutting on YouTube videos, as I tend to do instead of being productive with anything. And one series that I've taken to watching is What's in an OP by Mother's Basement. The channel is called Mother's Basement. And he does, it's primarily an anime review channel, but he has a segment of it that he devotes precisely to anime openings, and he kind of almost takes them frame by frame and critiques them. And he does very well. It's very interesting, and it's quite novel. I've never seen anyone really take that approach before. And it really got me thinking, because a lot of us, at least those of you who are listening and work on comics and stuff like that, a lot of us I was thinking, what concern do we have that's tantamount to, an opening like that or something like that? And the closest thing we have is a comic book cover. And they tend to serve the same basic purpose, in that it's the first impression of the series. So it's for comics in the past, for paper comics, not ones online at least. The purpose of a cover was to grab the potential reader's attention from the rack, and you see it among all these other covers and you pick them out. And it's not to say that doesn't exist online, because when you have something like, for instance, on Drunk Duck, where you have a community of lots of different comic covers, of lots of different comics, you click on the home page of the Duck, the first thing you see is a whole bunch of comic covers. So it's not like that doesn't exist to an extent that covers don't have a presence in webcomics. But when you get into, there are lots of other comics out there that you can just click into it. And a lot of the comics on the Duck too, if you just click into them, it doesn't take you to the first page. It takes you into the middle of that comic, or the latest page that they've posted. And that's your first, what's the word? Your first impression of the comic. And so it got me thinking, as webcomics, webcomic artists and creators, a lot of us still tend to make covers nonetheless, and not just for the very beginning of the comic archive itself, but there'll be covers for different chapters of the comic throughout the archive. Covers that you will never see unless you're already clicking through the archive. Yeah. So, I don't know, it kind of got me wondering why we do that, because I do it too. Is it just something that we have ingrained from us, since a lot of us grew up reading paper comics? Is it just something fun that we like to preserve and do, or do we think that they still have some kind of impact?
Well, yeah, because so there is a you're talking about the practical reason for having covers, and also
I have the practical reason, and if you don't have so why do you do it? Like,
for me,
just
a sec, sorry. Just got to pause. So covers, why do I do? Well, the reason I do covers, I love covers, because it gives me a chance to break away from the panel by panel storytelling thing, which that's what you're doing in a comic, and just have it all on one page, just one splash panel, pretty much, which is what a cover is. and either having a whole bunch of images of things that are going to appear in the comic, or what I like to do is have an iconic scene of what is going to happen in the comic. If I'm really lazy, I'll just do a character and just show a couple of characters in some clothing or whatever, and have some kind of unspoken kind of tension between these people that the readers have to interpret. But if I'm on my game, then I'll just show a panel, well, not a panel, but a scene of what is going to happen within the comic. Or like I know a scene is coming up, so I'll just draw that exciting scene that I really want to get to in the comic, and I'll have that as the cover. So it'll be out of context, and it'll sort of be really interesting, and it'll be intriguing to people, and I get to put everything in it that I want to put in it.
A tease.
Well, yeah, exactly, in a way. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to do that. I really, really love doing that. And those will often be my favorite picture from that whole chapter will be the cover. And I'll, treasure those. And I find them really excellent reference too. I'll go back and use those images in that scene as reference for like the tone of what I'm going to do with the entire rest of the chapter. I'll be using that as my tonal guide that I want the rest of the chapter to look like.
Yeah.
So that's why I do it. How about you guys?
I think I started doing them initially just sort of, like Pitt mentioned, like just kind of that's the way print comics are. And I thought maybe eventually I would do printed. I still haven't all these years later so far, but I was like, I wanted to design a title logo and I have the number on there. And, I used to love comics. And so it'd have like a title, it'd have a thing. It'd be just like the print. And, like you said, you could either draw a character or just sort of suggest a tone. So I did that for my first 5. And then I think I got you, Oz, to do one.
Yep. I remember that one still.
I asked you to do it, and you did it. It was great. And Call Me Tom did one. And Kim Luster did one. And after that, I just stopped doing them. So I just kind of like, well, it's kind of like started to think like, what's the point kind of thing. I should just get to the story. It's not printed. So if I ever did print, I could do covers at that point. But I do agree with you, though, with everything you're saying. Like it is, they are fun to do. You can set a tone or take a little break from the, content of the story, give people a little, little forecast of what's to come or whatever. But I stopped doing them years ago. But,
man, you should keep up with it. I love it.
I might start up again. Yeah.
Because I do these features all the time. Every second week I do a feature. I love covers in people's comics for that too, because it gives me the best representation I can have of their comic when I want to promote them. So if you ever want to promote your work, go through your covers, because they're the best promotion you can get. Because like Pitt says, it's the first page people see on the front of Drunk Duck. But also, if you want to promote your comic anywhere else, your covers are a great thing to mine for promo art, for ads, or anything. It's a fantastic resource, so you should use them.
So let me ask you, and this is a pretty broad, general question, but so when people are posting covers, like when you see on the homepage of the site, what gets you to actually click on the thumbnail, if we are saying that thumbnails are covers? I think they are pretty much.
Yeah.
So what gets you to go out of your way and click?
Slick looking art does it. If someone has...
That's the easy answer, right? Like, like just make it look fucking good, right?
It's the easy answer, but it's true. It doesn't matter what is depicted, as long as... color obviously gets it's actually it's not even color. No, because there's so few black and white ones that they get you to look as well. But slick looking art gets me to have a look.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up it reminds me of an old pet peeve of mine, actually. 'Cause I don't encounter it on the dock so much because people tend to use their own art as comic covers. But I remember back in the day when I'd read more print comics, it's even happened a little bit currently as well. As like I would hate when you'd pick up a comic and it'd have this awesome cover, but then you'd open it and they'd have like this different art inside and stuff like that. And like, it wouldn't be terrible art, but it would just be like, you could tell that like, you know, they had the regular artist on and they were, you know, doing the thing and making sure it's getting out on time, but they, you know, didn't have enough, confidence in that artist, that, or for whatever reason, you know, maybe the artist doesn't feel comfortable making covers or whatever, but it would be so different than what you'd see on the cover. And it makes you feel like, damn it, you tricked me, you know, like you did it. Like you got me to pick it up when I otherwise wouldn't have given this a second look. So like kind of bravo. Like, yeah. But the thing is, it wouldn't keep me invested though, once I picked it up. So maybe it would get me like, oh, like I don't want to give this my time anymore, you know? But I don't know. Maybe it works sometimes.
No, it's a bad idea to do that as an artist. Your covers should be, you know, representative of the work. Like when Baines is saying you got the guest artist to do the covers, but the thing was that was for chapters. That's not your main cover, and that's the difference. Yeah. So it's fine to have.
You're not representing yourself with that.
Yeah, I didn't put it in the thumbnail, and if it was print, honestly, it didn't even really occur to me until you just said it. But I remember like doing like way back in the day, like seeing awesome covers by like Arthur Adams was this artist who did these awesome covers, and then you'd open it and like the art inside was different and not as good. I'd be like, oh. So I think that's a good point. Yeah, if I did printed editions, it might be. Bad idea to have, you know, other artists on the covers. In a webcomic it is different, of course. It's
unless you actually make it, unless you make it the thing of your comic in the sense that not the outer cover, but knows that it's a guest art. When you have an inside cover.
Yeah, an alternate.
Like it's
cover.
Like a small feature.
Oh yeah, that
like
would be fine. Yeah, totally. That'd be great.
A lot of artists, a lot of comics do that. I've seen. Yeah, and that's really welcome because it gives you like an extra feature. Whereas, I remember that as well. That's really turned me off mainstream comics, that they had different cover art from the inside stuff, and it was so rare to find them where the outside cover was really representative of the inner work. You know, even something as simple as having a color cover with a black and white inside, you know, can be so disappointing that art doesn't continue through.
That bugs me a lot with webcomics, and I see that I used to see it pretty regularly, where you'd have a color thumbnail, and then it brings you down when it's black and white. It's like, it makes you want to invest in it less. Because you're looking forward to color, you know. It's like, I want to see color.
And it's not as if black and white comics are bad. It's just you expect something different. If they'd have a black and white cover, that would work just fine. Yeah, it's
like you're anticipating color though, so it can if the art is really good, or if like the comic can still win you over, but it's making it harder for itself. For the comic itself, it's creating its own stumbling block by advertising color and then having black and white.
Let's see. I think that's a difficult thing for a black and white comic, though, is because you don't really want to have a black and white cover. I mean, you can, but you don't really want to do that because that makes it less visible among other covers. So I can get with black and white comics why that would certainly be the case. But yeah, but I do agree that, there is something initially when opening it up and you see that there's that change inside. That's when you really got to make sure your black and white game is really good. One of my favorite comics of all time, the old Dead World series. And I like the newer one as well, but I got so hooked on the original one. That was inked for a long time, and the cover art was also by Vince Locke, the guy who does the Cannibal Corpse covers. And he was just awesome in the artwork throughout this whole thing. But so the covers would be in color, and they'd be true to Vince Locke. These big, like, watercolored, gory, brutal, fucked up pieces of art, Then you open it up and you've got the black and white inside. But the black and white is so appealing as well. It's got texture to it and stuff, but it's so good that it still kept you in. So I guess if you're going to have that transition, just it's so easy to say that just don't suck, but what else could you say? Like, just,
You're right, though. That's what it is. I used to read Savage Sword of Conan, the magazine version, and it would have these like oil painted covers.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And then it was black and white inside, but it was awesome. The black and white served that
it was so
tone
good.
Well. So good, yeah. And the covers
I'm
were
kind of missing it right now.
Missing it too. It's been years.
I would have to say that it doesn't, in my opinion at least, it doesn't matter if it is black and white inside, as long as the style, the artist that did the color cover is the one that does the black and white inside. If you have the same style and the feeling that it's the same artist, I think that you can get away with even slightly, not completely, but I mean, and drastically, but slightly better art on the cover by the same artist is acceptable, at least for me.
As long as it's the same style.
It won't turn me off from trying the comic and reading the comic further.
Yeah, when there's a huge...
Yeah, that's kind of the manga thing, right? Like, I mean, it bugged me initially with manga, too, the first time I read it. Like, the beautiful covers, color covers, and you go inside, like, it's black and white. It's still got, shading, but it's like, you get used to it, and I still read some manga. And...
Yeah, well, say Masamune Shiro, which I absolutely love. I've got Ghost in the Shell, it's one of my favorite mangas. And he has beautiful covers, and I love all his chapters. Like the trade paperback is like the omnibus edition, and so that has all the color covers within it, and they're fantastic. They're in a different style because he used watercolors back then, but his line art is amazing in itself. So it isn't, and it is his art as well.
Yeah.
So it's not disappointing. It's the same.
Yeah.
Same artist.
So it's like, because I can recall some more comics now like that, now that I think about it. So I guess just the thing that becomes disappointing isn't necessarily that it's a different artist. It's just when you open it up and what you see is generic. That's for me anyway. When you open it up and I don't mind if it's too much of a shift, just as long as it's not generic. And that's unfortunately a lot of the case what it is.
Yeah.
And I can see part of the reason also from the company's perspective, why they'd want to do that. Like if they have new artists that are just getting into the field, they don't have a lot of exposure yet. And, when people buy things off of shelves, they're going to tend to gravitate towards names that they, and it just is not, if that new artist isn't yet producing that style of work or isn't yet known, then they're going to have a handicap in getting into the market. So, I mean, I can understand if you would use a different cover. It's just, it also just kind of sucks a little bit,
Yeah.
From a reader's perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is tricky. I mean, like I say with Masamune Shiro, obviously he was a huge name by the time he was doing Ghost in the Shell, I assume. So he could afford to be individual in his style. And have his own stamp on it. Yeah, so there's that. What about different...
The Savage Sword, just to go back to that for 1 second, it's been so long, but I think they were different artists. It was like John Buscema or whatever doing the inner art.
Yeah.
I think, right? Is it Sal Buscema or John Buscema? And then it was different
Something
people
like
doing
that.
those painted covers. It was like Boris Vallejo.
Jesus, really?
That's the name I remember. That's the only name I remember because my brother had posters, like the fantasy posters, and he did them sometimes. Yeah. But I think it was different. Like the style on the covers was completely different than.
Jeez, I hate Boris.
The style inside. Oh, really? Vallejo. That's probably how you say it.
Yeah. Oh God, that guy. Airbrush.
I remember getting excited by seeing his name though, because
yeah,
like I said, we had like posters of like by him, like these fantasy posters. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, he's one of those guys. As a young person, you'll like Boris Vallejo, and then you see the people he imitated. Obviously Frank Frazetta, and then you go, oh God, why was I ever into Boris Vallejo?
True, yeah.
Well, this kind of brings up another aspect a little bit, in that I think covers also can have a collector's aspect, and that's another thing that will help kind of overcome if the artwork isn't necessarily, the deciding factor in why you pick that book up or not. Because I remember a lot of times when I was back in my day, when I would be able to go into, when there were comic book shops to go into and buy comics from still, there were a lot of times, you get kind of in that almost comic drunk mood, like when you find like the dollar bin or something, and you start pawing through it, and then you find all these covers that it's like, all right, like the cover's cool enough that I don't really care what's inside. I kind of want this little piece of artwork, so I'm going to buy this and I'm going to keep it. So I guess, from that aspect, it works too, because their covers, I think, do have a big collector's appeal aspect to them.
I get what you mean. I was never really into comics per se, but with novels and things like that, it was the same thing. If they were cheap enough, just buy them for the cover, and then maybe read them later, and see whether the story inside really adds up to the cover. You don't even care. And a lot of sci-fi and fantasy in the old days, they reused covers, and the cover really had nothing to do with what was inside, and it could be really, really bloody disappointing that, the thing you were reading about had nothing to do with the cover. So that was a weird experience, and I think the same thing happened with comics. Like you say, Boris Vallejo, Boris did generic fantasy, and they would just put it on anything. Records, record covers, or CDs, or whatever. Movies.
You used to see these awesome old, I was going to say movie covers, like movie posters or DVD or VHS covers of these, especially older fantasy movies and stuff like that. Some of the covers were so awesome. And then the movie was, just horrible and cheap. Yeah, it's
Deathstalker or something. Deathstalker, he did the covers on those. And that has no relation to what's in the movies at all.
Right.
It's such a weird... Oh, jeez, those fantasy movies from the 80s and the 70s. Definitely worth checking out.
Yes.
But yeah, the bait and switch, that is a big thing. That actually... Back to the subject of doing features, that was like Skull Monkey and I, when we were doing that, we had this rule that you should never, if it's a black and white comic, the masturbator, you should never do a color cover, because we always have to do cover images for the features. You should never do a color thumbnail for a black and white comic. You should never do a black and white thing for and the art that you picked for your cover should always be very representative of the comic that you're featuring, and that was our hard and fast rule. I've since gone, bugger, I just want people to read it, so I'm just going to pick the best art that this artist has done. But back then, we had this strict rule about always having representative artworks. If they had amazing covers and crap artwork, we wouldn't show the amazing cover. We'd show like the best example of the representative art of what they were doing. Yeah, but I don't do that anymore. So I'm very dishonest now.
Look at the man behind the curtain of Drunk Talk.
Exactly. I just want
the Oz man.
Yes, the great and powerful
of Oz.
It's the great and powerful Oz. Yeah, that's the truth. I just want people to read the work. I don't care about it.
Yeah, because it could just take one peek to get somebody interested. They might not all be the. See, I consider myself a bit of a hard critic. Not that I'm going to tear something apart, but there's a very slim margin where I'll pick something up and then remain invested in it. And I think as an artist, it makes it so that artwork has a doubly heavy effect on whether I get invested or whether I continue on with something or not, because I'm interested in art. I love seeing what people do with art, and you might have an amazing story, but for me, if comic-wise, obviously, if the artwork isn't there to keep my shortened attention span invested while you tell that story, I'm probably not going to stay around very long. So once again, that's just me. There are a lot of people who are the opposite. Who get much more invested in story and don't care as much about the artwork. And I can make exceptions, but the thing is, when I pick something up and I look at it, for me personally, artwork is going to be the deciding factor if I buy that book or not.
Yeah, for me too. I'll go on, Chance.
I am a little bit like that. The second category, perhaps because I come from being mainly a novelist. If your story is engaging enough and the artwork doesn't distract me from the story, then I will probably stay on for the ride. I do require, aesthetically speaking, enough of a level of art for me to be able to follow what I'm seeing, enough to immerse myself in the story. But I don't require, I'm amazed and I'm bowled over and I love it if I find it, but the art is not going to keep me if the story isn't good. If the story is generic and it's boring and it's just me looking at the pictures, I will not follow. I will probably like the posters and the covers and I will take those, but I will not actually read the comic.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough. Exactly. Some of the featured comics I look through, I'm drawn in by the art. I find the story too boring that I think, I can't feature this because no one will be interested in it. And if they do read it, they'll think, oh my God, why was this featured? I'm never ever going to look at features again because they're just so boring and pointless. Yeah, so there has to be more than art.
Well,
go on.
I was just going to say, well, this has me thinking now because, so I was looking at covers as the predominant way that people get, I can never remember that stupid word.
Invested?
It's a common word. Impression. I get impression and invested mixed up when I'm trying to say them. So you're not the only one having problem with words tonight, Oz. But, covers aren't the only thing you get a first impression from. I was completely disregarding the fact that there's a lot of book communities. Tanya got me thinking about this. There are book communities where people will tell each other, give each other recommendations and whatnot. And they'll talk about plots, and even if you go on something like Amazon or something, there are ratings, and then there are people discussing, what they thought of the book and whatnot. So when it comes to something more based on writing, I guess maybe that's the way that you get your first impression is, who says what about it, or because, covers can still work, and they do often actually. See, I'm rambling at this point because those books still do have covers. But I guess what I'm saying is I was discounting the act of discussion as a means by which
word of
things
mouth
circulate and are
stuff.
compelled to be picked up. And
it's hard to know like what's going to be a person's approach to something. Are they going to hear about it from other people? Are they going to like flip it over and look at the back where there's a blurb, or if there's a blurb on the web version?
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways that someone might first take notice of something, or that they can be drawn in by it. When it's a printed comic, of course, it's going to be the cover pretty much, and you might flip through. Or, like you said, maybe you've heard about it. Yeah, it's true. It's interesting.
Yeah. It's tricky, because you can't get always reviews or blurbs. I try and do a good blurb when I do features. So I try and do the old style of a quick kind of précis of what the story is about, or a teaser, really, and then just some generic description, not generic, but a quick description of the style of story and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way I try and get people invested in it. But yeah, you has to have a good cover as well. But we are talking about covers more than anything else. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. I was just kind of straying off on a tangent and
just fine. But
kind of reminding myself that there are other ways that people.
Yeah, I was trying to jump into. Okay, so there's different styles of cover that people will have. Like on modern books these days, the cover that I fucking hate. Two styles of cover that I fucking hate is people taking a crop of some classical painting. Jesus fucking, it's like no effort whatsoever into it.
Oh, there's the button. Ooh.
So a crop of some classical painting, or they just do massive text with some kind of like tiny image of like a griffin or a bullet or something like this, with the author's name and the title of the book, and no cover at all, just a blank image. I think just don't even fucking bother. I'm never ever gonna read that book. That's just gonna go straight in the bin for me. I'm never ever gonna pick that up. This is the modern. I like covers where an artist has been tasked with putting effort into creating some kind of teaser of what's inside the book, some kind of like grabbing the feeling of what the book's about. They've actually hired an illustrator. None of this graphic design shit. Graphic designers can go and kill themselves, right? Don't give a shit.
Well, that might be overkill, but
I'm a graphic designer,
overdoing it.
but I would put the effort in to try and capture the reader's imagination rather than just bloody text, or stealing an image from an old painting, because there's no copyright on it, so they can do whatever. They can just get a crop of some beautiful old painting and they just crop out some tiny little image. I hate that kind of thing. But that's not, people don't do that with web comics, unfortunately. But yeah, there are different styles of doing comics. That's what different styles of doing covers is what I'm trying to talk about. So,
yes.
I think Iron Scarf mentioned what he would do is grab a whole lot of different elements of what's going to be in the story and put them all together so people can say, all right, there's this, there's this, there's this. And so he's not depicting a scene. He's just grabbing all these different different items
Yeah.
that are all going to be in the story, and trying to create some kind of evocative scene based on that. Which, I find that's great. A cover artist that I love who used to do that was Josh Kirby. So his covers for the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett would be composed of either a scene, but most usually a scene with every single character that's going to be in the story, or every single bloody element that's in the story. And he'll just blob that all together on one cover. And it was fantastic and amazing. So these scenes wouldn't actually happen in the book where all these things came together. But as you read it, you pieced together, oh, this thing on the cover came from this part. This thing on the cover came from that part. Oh, my God. And so it was an amazing kind of bit of detective work. So if Iron Scarf's doing that, it's fantastic. So that's one style. And, yeah, for me, I do a scene. What about you guys? How do you approach covers?
It's a sad story for me.
What's that, Chance?
I said that was a sad story for me. Sad story of how I approach covers. Because although I would love to have this amazing bombastic cover that can get across in one single image everything that, for example, Without Moonlight stands for and everything, I can never do that. And so I usually opt for I mean, I know that they're boring, and I'm actually thinking of ways to revisit that. But I usually do very static style covers. So I don't think that they would be too attractive. It's just like, here are my characters, and this is my drawing style, and that's the title of the comic. And if you like this, please come in. But basically that. It's not a hook as it should be. Like, it should be a hook of some sort. But it's not.
Well, like we were talking about, chapter covers are a different thing to front covers. So
I'm talking about my front cover. My chapter covers, actually, I think they are a little bit more interesting because they usually represent either symbolically or in some manner the main theme that's going to permeate the entire chapter. So I think that is a bit more interesting.
Well,
it's like a bit of a teaser or foreshadowing.
Well, say your front cover is a good example to look at. So the cover of Without Moonlight is a few of the main characters, at least for the beginning of the story. So you've got Basil and you've got Fotis and, all the rest of the characters. And whether these people continue through the comic, people will find out. But the thing is...
Yeah, you start with those.
Yeah. The thing is, that is in the style of a photograph, which is very evocative for the time. So you're sort of thinking about it. Oh, there's a relationship between these characters. And this is the particular relationship, the way they're looking at each other. And this is in the style of a photograph. It's color, which is very rare for a 1940s kind of thing. But, that's by the by. It looks like a 1940s photograph, which has a certain, that has a certain kind of meaning. Like, it's a family photograph, so there are certain kind of aspects to it, so it does work. That's another way of doing covers. You do them in, to be evocative of a kind of a thing. Maybe someone will do a cover that's based on mirroring a classic movie cover, a classic movie poster. So that can be the style of cover that you approach. And that has a meaning based on that. I'll go on, Tans.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. Now that makes me feel much better about my choice. But particular cover, I sort of cheated in terms of the composition because I intentionally fashioned it after a very famous photo of the era, which is a photo of leopards.
Yeah.
They actually were audacious enough to go and get a group photo, like this is us. So they were a very famous group in Athens. So I think it was in Athens anyway. So I took this photo because the composition was so specific and it was so rare and everything. So I emulated it, let's say, like I just put my characters into those same positions. So this is a little bit like taking that beautiful painting and slapping it on the cover.
No,
I just yeah.
It would be if you actually did that, but you didn't. You synthesized it yourself and created something new and artistic based on it, which is, that is where the real skill comes in. That is where, the art comes in, because you're intellectually adopting that for a deliberate reason, because it is actually the leapers. It does actually apply to your comic, and you're putting your own characters into that position, which is a fantastic thing. I mean, the cropping idea would be like, instead of, if you want to base your cover of your book or your comic on a movie, and so the good way to do it would be to put your characters in the style of that cover, and that would be amazing. The cropping lazy way would just be to take the movie cover and use that and put your own text over the top, which is terrible. And I actually do that kind of thing when I do Quackcast covers often, because I'm so lazy and a hypocrite. So I'll do that with Quackcast covers. But yeah, that is a terrible thing to do if you're doing it for your own work, your own comic. You should not use other people's art in that way. It's lazy and dishonest and crap. But yeah, so that is a way of doing, that is another kind of method of doing covers. Whereas, like, my thing is often doing a scene. I don't always do that. Sometimes I do characters facing each other, or just I pick out something like that. But yeah, so scenes is my style. Iron Scarf's thing of having all the different elements. Your style of doing a homage to a classic photo of the era. Pitt, how do you do your covers? We haven't really looked at Future Admits covers.
Brutality. It's not too complicated. Although the way I talk would probably make it more complicated than it needs to be again. Yeah, I just kind of like, when I start on a new chapter, I have a vague notion of what I want to do. So I'll just kind of, I think it's what you were talking about before. The video froze for a little bit, so I left and I had to come back. But
okay.
Where I just kind of capture the spirit of what's going to be going on in that chapter, because I don't always necessarily know exactly what's going to be going on. So I don't know, just think of a cool image. Or there was a time too where I actually was having some guest artists as well. So I remember when I would talk to them, Hippie Van was one, and House of Muses was another, and I think I had one or two more. Scream was another one, I think. He did some pages for me. But anyway, I remember when I was telling them about what I wanted, I think pretty much what I did was, I'm like, all right, so in this chapter, Bones is going to be in a brainwashing facility somewhere, and I don't really have any ideas of how this is going to look totally, but maybe have him be on the run or something like that, and that they would kind of, play with it a little bit, or yeah, so it was a pretty loose process, just
whatever. Okay, well,
in my head, so
I like doing that. Say with my favorite cover of Pinky TA, which is always my latest one. I have, it's called Test Pilot, because I thought that looked cool, and it's got a picture of Pinky and big explosions happening, this huge land machine in the background, and this cool mecha. And so those were all elements that I thought I might want to have in the comic, but I didn't know that would actually be in there yet. And since I've done it, I've had to go back to that cover and base my things on those items, which has been a bit of a problem, because that was just I thought, okay, I want a land ship in this comic. I've got no idea what it bloody looks like, but it's going to be in there, so I'm just going to do that on the cover because that will look cool. I want to have this mecha in. I've got no idea what it looks like, but I've got to do something that sort of looks like an earlier version of the mecha and like a test pilot version, so I'll just draw up whatever. And since I've done the comic, actually done the pages for the chapter, I've had to go back to that land ship, and oh my god, that's been the hardest bloody thing to draw, because I did a rough version for the cover, and now I've had to actually draw it from all different angles and work out how it fits together. And it's been I have to keep referencing this, and I keep going, oh god. And the mecha itself as well, that's actually changed, because the one on the cover it looks good, but it doesn't work in all the ways that I need it to work in the comic. So it's actually changed. So that's sort of been like a bit of a millstone for me, because I want to be faithful to what's on the cover, but then I can't really use it. So I have to make the version in the comic not too far away from it, but I have to keep, sort of, it's a compromise between not looking too far away from it, but and also wishing that I could go back to the cover and change it. To look like the thing.
Because that's another thing, is the covers are like the perfect envisionment of what you want to have go on. That's the vision. That's
precisely it. Yeah, it's the most perfect version of what's going to happen in the comic.
I mean, that's another thing too, right? I mean, since it is such a perfect vision of what you are trying to reproduce, that's another thing that can make things sometimes I'm forgetting words again. Disappointing when you open up the work, and it's not necessarily that the artwork's bad or anything like that, but just like if say it gets to that point in the story that you see on the cover, but it doesn't get there in a way that you thought it was going to, or like that's the big climactic scene on the cover, but then it gets there and it's really like just this little thing that happened that isn't that cool, and they were just making it look super intense and epic on the cover. It's like, oh, fuck you, dude, like, give me my time back.
Yeah, they do that in movies too. They get this
that's exactly
all the time.
Yeah.
Oh jeez, they show this awesome scene and it's just a nothing in the actual movie. Yeah, I can't think of any.
I remember seeing that on old comics all the time, like old X-Men comics or whatever, like where they exactly what you said. They'd choose sort of a pivotal moment of action that would play out, even if it was not as epic, or even if it wasn't like it was lame in the story. It was just like different. It's like, oh, that's weird that they would change those details, and it didn't play out that way at all. Like, it's kind of odd. It's like, how?
Actually,
why?
That's how I got into writing stories in the first place. There were these amazing covers, and amazing in the sense of the story they were teasing you with. Like you had the main hero holding his sidekick, or I don't know, in a princess. And oh my God, something's gonna happen, whatever, and things like that. And either that never actually happened in the story, like you were expecting at least a guy to get hurt or something, or at least knocked out. That just knock him out. At least do something to resemble the cover. Or it happened in such a lame way that it completely made you be angry at the cover. Like you saw the cover afterwards and knowing what it referred to, like a dream sequence, for example. Or something.
The dream sequence.
And I hated that. So I would angrily go to my notebook and write the story again to fix it, like super angrily. And I would say, okay, this is the story for this cover. I will not acknowledge the official. And that's how I got into writing. So
wow.
That reminds me, pulp, the early pulp covers were like that in the 1920s and 30s. So they had, Hugo Gernsback doing his fantastic, amazing stories or whatever they were, and so he was this brilliant Hungarian promoter who created this genre, or at least marketed it really well. So he's got these writers doing all these kinds of stories, and he's got these science fiction artists doing all these kind of covers, and the covers don't necessarily have anything to do with the stories, but he like pretended they did, and it caused so much disappointment to the readers when they'd see these amazing robots or whatever, and the story would not be anything about those robots, or it would be about robots, but in a completely different kind of way. And so he was the king of disappointing people and bait and switch, that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely.
I'm curious. I wonder, this probably wouldn't work as a community project because it would take a bit of investment, but it'd be an interesting idea to see if there was some kind of project where you'd post a cover without any kind of context attached to it, and then have people make stories based on the cover that you post. That'd be interesting to see the different ways that people interpret it, where they place it in the story or what they do with it, how much they use it to represent the work that they create. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, well, you could just do a prose version, like a short story describing what was happening or what led up to the cover or something like that, rather than actually comicking it out, which would take a lot of effort.
Yeah. So I probably wouldn't read it, though. I need pictures.
You could have a rule like that said, okay, no 3,000 word stories. It has to be like 500 words max. Something like that. Then it would be readable.
Well, flash fiction.
Yeah, precisely. It would force people to make a readable kind of thing without droning on and on and on and on and on and creating some boring novel-length bloody thing.
Interesting.
But yeah, or you could just thumbnail it out and come up with a thing, so it wouldn't be too much effort. But yeah, that's a fantastic community art sort of project. I like it. Because you could use existing covers. You don't have to create a special cover for it. Just pick out your favorite.
Or you could even take a frame of some page of a comic, like a single frame that could be cover worthy in a sense, and just use that.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Cover worthy frame. I like it. When Baines, when you got me to do your cover, you actually described the scene, and that was a scene that happened in the comic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like doing that kind of thing. I love doing that. If I did that again, I'd do it way better. I don't like that cover anymore. I don't like what I did. So,
really?
Yeah.
Well, I remember I sort of had a layout for it, and I sent you like a sketch, I think. Like she's behind the wall, because I drew a version of that myself. I was like, maybe get Oz to do it if he has time. It'd be better. And it was. But you gave him a baseball cap. I remember that. Like the dude in the. Didn't you give? He has a different kind of hat. I don't know. It's been so long. I got to look at it again.
Yeah, it was going to be like some kind of fedora or something in the original art, and I give him a baseball cap.
Right.
Because
so the readers felt very betrayed by that. I'm just kidding. Nobody noticed.
I was arrogant as an artist. No, it has to be my vision. Fuck you, Bones.
It's got to be a cap. Baseball caps are much more scary. Fedoras. Cliche fedora. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it was an awesome cover though. I was like totally psyched by that.
Well, what I was thinking was that because you said it's going to be some kind of thug stalking her, I thought, well, back then people weren't wearing fedoras, and if someone was wearing a fedora, it wouldn't be a creepy thing because only like sort of certain sort of people wore fedoras. It wasn't. Yeah, I thought if you really want to do a
you wouldn't see. It would be unusual. That's true.
Yeah,
and yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why I did it. Oh, so you actually linked us to this different version of covers. So Archie, Superman.
I wasn't even looking that up, but literally, like I just looked up comic covers, and then it like a whole montage of what Tans was talking about came up. So it's kind of weird.
Well, that's interesting. So those particular covers with the dead character in the arms, that's based on the Pieta, which is the famous image of Mary holding Christ, the dead Christ. So that's what that artistic convention is based on, which is
that's why it's so pervasive, I guess.
Yeah. Which is quite a cool thing. So they can reference that in their imagery, especially the one with Wolverine. That is exactly based.
Look at him being carried like a little bitch. It's so hurt.
And also
so tragic.
And also he's naked. That makes it a little awkward.
Right.
Yeah, what's that skull looking at?
Yeah, exactly.
That is the best version.
Yeah, that's quite intimate. Death is a lady in Marvel, actually. It's a skeleton. I don't know that it really matters that much anyway.
Oh, jeez. As long as it's got the vagina
She's
bones.
just a little plant, that's all. Oh.
That's right.
I love the Superman one. That is hilarious. That's meant to be like one of these empathetic kind of things, but he just looks funny. Don't you think? You just want to laugh at him. Suck it, Superman. Your crying face.
He's always come up as a little melodramatic, but maybe you want your covers to be a little melodramatic. I mean, that again goes into the whole performance thing and grand summing up and.
Exactly. You want, if you're going to do something striking and shocking, you want to try to evoke some kind of feeling with your work. Yeah, exactly. I look forward to the day when I do a Pieta cover.
Pinky's carrying like her tromper, like. No!
I was so tempted of doing one of those. I really wanted to do one of those.
You should have done it of Basil, yeah.
Do it! Dude, make it an alternate cover.
I might. Actually, I will probably do something like that, like for a pin-up, quote-unquote, but I really wanted to have it in the comic, like so badly, but it wouldn't be realistic.
But it doesn't matter because you're capturing the feeling of the thing. It doesn't actually have to appear in the comic. You just have to capture.
But I wanted it to be. I wanted it. Actually, I needed it to be extremely harshly realistic. Like no last words, no pieta, and everything had to happen extremely quickly, and everything was ugly and rough.
So you're not having.
But I wanted it so much.
Cradling the dead
I
body.
will do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would work. That would be fantastic. Yeah, like Pitt says, do it as an alternate. Do it as a special
I
edition.
probably will.
Yeah, it needs it.
As a special. I will put that in my Patreon. There you go.
There you are. Yeah, I love that kind of thing. Covers are a good chance to play and have fun. They don't have to be serious, and they don't have to actually reference what's in the comic. If you're doing chapter covers especially, you don't have the same responsibilities as main covers, so you don't have to worry about the bait and switch so much, because it's not the first thing people see. It's just your bit of fun. It's because you're doing a webcomic, and that's in the middle of the work. It's not like a cover of an edition that you're doing. It's just in there. It gives you a break from the normal comic and a chance to let loose. So do it. I don't know if we sort of.
The problem is that you're not supposed to spoil your comic on the cover, though. People get pissed at that.
Yeah. You don't want to reveal what's going to happen. Yeah, unless it's going to be a bait and switch kind of thing. Death of this character, and that character doesn't actually die, because in the next panel, it turns out it was just a flesh wound.
Yeah. I'm fine, everybody.
I hate that. Or they were wearing a bulletproof vest that nobody had seen ever.
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
it was Mithril.
Oh man, yeah. Those are bastards. Absolute bastards. I hate it when they do that.
Yeah.
But
though to Tolkien's credit, he had prepared us for that, because Frodo had this entire scene talking about that. So he was entitled to be wearing that, unlike everybody else.
Gets a free pass. See all these other bastards with their hidden bulletproof jackets. Oh, yeah. I hate that. That always is a pisser. All right. Okay, I think we've sort of... go on.
No.
I was going to sum up. We sort of reached the natural conclusion to the Quackcast. And the cover story. That's what I'll call it. The cover story. Well, thank you guys for chatting about covers, which are really fun to do. And
yeah, cool topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get into it. Enjoy your covers.
Well done.
Good thread, Pit.
Thank you.
Good thread. And more people should contribute.
I'm going to go back into editing Lumberjacks into people's posts now.
I hope you apologize to Bravo for that.
It wasn't Bravo.
You sure?
Bravo, I did the other thing too.
Oh, right. Yes. All right.
No, and I still have to apologize. I'm sorry, Bravo, if you're listening to this. I don't think you really love Hitler. I was just being cheeky.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
That was good.